as President Joe Biden, gave his first joint address to Congress. Now, the speech was given to a socially distanced audience, and it wasn't considered a State of the Union address because it is so early on in his administration. We're still within the first, or actually coming up to the first 100 days. Here are a few highlights and some low points of his speech last night. Let's take a look.
Mitch and Chuck will understand it's good to be almost home, down the hall. Anyway, thank you all. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President. No president has ever said those words from this podium. No president has ever said those words, and it's about time.
Now, two things with this first clip of Joe Biden. You could see how socially distanced the audience was, the joint session of Congress was, and the fact that he noted the historic moment. This was, in fact, the first time that that we have both a woman as the Speaker of the House in Nancy Pelosi and a woman as a Vice President in Kamala Harris, and it was a historic moment in that regard. Joe Biden did not mention former President Trump, but he did allude to the condition that Donald Trump left the American people in with this clip where Joe Biden juxtaposed his hopefulness for the future with the low, or with how rather the first 100 days ago, the American House was on fire.
Crisis to opportunity, setbacks into strength. We all know life can knock us down, but in America, we never, ever, ever stay down. Americans always get up. Today, that's what we're doing. America's rising anew, choosing hope over fear, truth over lies, and light over darkness. After 100 days of rescue and renewal, America's ready for a takeoff, in my view. We're working again, dreaming again, discovering again, and leading the world again. We have shown each other and the world that there's no quit in America, none. 100 days ago, America's house was on fire. We had to act. And thanks to the extraordinary leadership of Speaker Pelosi, Majority Leader Schumer, and the overwhelming support of the American people, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, we did act. Together, we passed the American Rescue Plan, one of the most consequential rescue packages in American history. We're already seeing the results.
After that, President Joe Biden discussed COVID-19, in which he stated, quote, "There is still more work to do to beat this virus, but tonight I can say because of you, the American people, our progress these past 100 days against the worst pandemic in history has been one of the greatest logistical achievements in this country." Let's take a look at that.
Hugging their children and grandchildren instead of pressing hands against a window to say goodbye. It means everything. Those things mean everything. You know, there's still, you all know it, you know it better than any group of Americans, there's still more work to do to beat this virus. We can't let our guard down. But tonight, I can say, because of you, the American people, our progress these past 100 days against one of the worst pandemics in history has been one of the greatest logistical achievements this country's ever seen.
Now, I mentioned the low points of the night, and the first one is coming here, where President Biden spoke about the American Rescue Plan, which he stated will cut child poverty in half, which is an amazing thing. Even if we can't get everyone out of poverty, we have to start somewhere, but we should try to get every child. There should be nobody in poverty. But for the listening audience, you won't be able to see it, as half of the chamber applauded the fact that we're attacking child poverty. The Republican side of the chamber sat still and refused to applaud ending poverty.
And maybe most importantly, thanks to the American Rescue Plan, we're on track to cut child poverty in America in half this year.
And that is quite honestly the way the night went. You know, for all of the positive things that the administration said that they were either had done, doing, or were going to do, the Republicans sat down and refused to applaud any of it. President Biden also spoke about the Protect the Right to Organize Act, also known as the PRO Act, which would secure the rights of workers to unionize across the country. And as an addendum, he also called for an increase to the minimum wage of $15 an hour.
And unions built the middle class. So that's why I'm calling on Congress to pass Protect the Right to Organize Act, the PRO Act, and send it to my desk so we can support the right to unionize. And by the way, while you're thinking about sending things to my desk, let's raise the minimum wage to $15. No one.
Now, we'll get to the fact that they had an opportunity to raise their wage to $15 an hour. We'll talk about that in a moment. But before we go there, I want to talk about the next part of Joe Biden's speech that stood out to me as he called out the scam of trickle-down economics, the idea that if you cut taxes for the wealthy, that it would somehow trickle down into the middle class and the working class. Now, most of us have known for decades that this was, as George H.W. put it, nothing more than voodoo economics. But it was good to hear a sitting president finally call trickle-down economics what it really was.
My fellow Americans, trickle down. Trickle-down economics has never worked. And it's time to grow the economy from the bottom and the middle out. You know,
as you can see, not a single Republican would applaud that, because that has been the scam that has been run on the American people for the last 42 years, since Ronald Reagan took office in 1980, or he was elected into office in 1980. That's a brief summary of Biden's speech last night. Some of the biggest highlights included specifically the issues that the Republicans refused to clap for, including cutting childhood poverty. He spoke about ending the war in Afghanistan. Not a single Republican clapped for that. He talked about protecting workers' rights. Not a single Republican clapped for that. They sat down. And expanding child care for parents, which is a tremendous help to anyone with children. Republicans not only didn't clap for things that were obviously good for the people, Ted Cruz found himself asleep, possibly dreaming of his next vacation to Cancun. I mean, dude was completely, James, he was gone, man. He was dozing off the whole night. Between him and Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell, like, there were just clips, close-ups of them, and it was easier to see everybody because it was a socially distanced night. But I mean, who wouldn't clap for ending? I mean, and again, I want to emphasize, if we can end half of childhood poverty, then we have the ability to end all of childhood poverty. Now, maybe. And I know I know what I'm getting ready to say is pretty ridiculous, but maybe the Republicans weren't clapping for ending half of childhood poverty because they wanted him to end all of childhood poverty. But James, something tells me that's not really what was bothering them. I think what was bothering them is that it's going to cost them some increased taxes for us to do it.
Definitely, that's what that is. That's all that is. Because it's not a single person clapping. Man, y'all
not
stuck
a
on
single.
Trump. They stuck on Trump so much, bro.
Man, it was a good speech, and it was pretty hopeful in terms of if he actually does. Let me say it like this: if President Biden gets accomplished what he said he was going to do last night, then it actually will be tremendous. It will help so many Americans. We need to pass the PRO Act because there's about 37 states that are right to work states, including Florida and Georgia. Like these jobs, they call it right to work, but that means that you can be fired without any recourse.
Yep.
Right. And so not only can you be fired without any recourse, but it's structurally an impediment to organizing in unions. We saw the fight for unions in Bessemer, Alabama against Amazon, and we see how important it is for people to be able to unionize. So if he can accomplish cutting childhood poverty in half, I say let's go for all of it. If he can accomplish getting the PRO Act passed, if they can accomplish the expansion of child care so that the benefits to families being able to get universal child. If he can get some of those things done, it would be amazing. But Republicans actually are acting like these things, which are not remotely socialist. They're just decent. Right. But Republicans all night acted as though it was the worst speech that they had ever heard and that everything that he was fighting for was a bad thing. And this includes Senator Tim Scott, the Republican who gave the response to the speech last night. And he said a lot of things in the speech. We have 2 clips from Tim Scott, and he said a whole lot of things. But what stood out besides his relentless pandering to the Republican Party and trying to make it seem like, Joe Biden, well, he's a good guy, but he's too radical is essentially what he was saying last night. But what stood out to me about Tim Scott, James, was how he was peddling the dog whistles that Republicans have been saying about Black women and single mothers for generations now. And it's the idea of the welfare queen. Tim Scott came in and he's laundering. He's like, smuggling in these same tropes that make Republicans feel as though, yeah, he's one of the good ones. And oh yeah, he's talking about single mothers because we know the problem in this country is single motherhood. That's the image and the thinking of Republicans. Tim Scott really has found a way to try to blend in those racist dog whistles and mix them in with some type of positive Black affirmation. And he did this with this first clip about him growing up in a single mother home. I want everyone to listen very closely at how many racist tropes he includes in this first clip. Let's take a listen.
Growing up, I never dreamed I would be standing here tonight. When I was a kid, my parents divorced. My mother, my brother, and I moved in with my grandparents. 3 of us, sharing 1 bedroom. I was disillusioned and angry, and I nearly failed out of school. But I was blessed. First, with a praying mama. And let me say this, to the single mothers out there who are working their tails off, working hard, trying to make the ends meet, wondering if it's worth it, you can bet it is. God bless your amazing effort on the part of your kids.
You absolutely know the way that this played out to Republicans at home, those white conservatives watching Fox News at home. They were like, that's right, Tim Scott. You were angry, or you're an angry young Black man, and your mother, was single. These are the types of things that Republicans and conservatives in particular, white conservatives to be more precise, these are the types of tropes that they have always forwarded about Black people, single motherhood being the problem, not the fact that households are broken up for all kinds of reasons, particularly the flooding of crack in Black communities by the CIA. They're never going to talk about that. They're never going to talk about the economic impact of wages not increasing over the last 40 years. Like there's so many reasons that there are broken households, not only in the Black community, but across the country. 50% of marriages end in divorce. 50% of Christian marriages end in divorce. But what's important for Republicans and conservatives, white conservatives to be specific, is that we never explore all of the underlying issues, the economic issues, the social issues that they want. What they want you to do is always focus on the quote unquote behavior and the quote unquote laziness of the exactly what Ronald Reagan called them, which was welfare queens. This is just an extension. This is just the blackface on top of the welfare queen rhetoric. And this clown went even so far as to say that despite him having been pulled over 7 times in this country for no reason at all, in the beginning of his speech, he talked about he has suffered racism and how he had been, Tim Scott, been pulled over 7 times for no reason at all. He wanted to make sure that you knew that there's no racism in America. And if there's racism, he said it's on the part of progressives who called him an Uncle Tom. Let's take a look in.
Today, kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination. And it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the present.
James, your boy talked about him being called an Uncle Tom. But last night, trending on Twitter was Uncle Tim Scott. And the fact that this clown can't see how he is perhaps one of the best stepping fetches that I have seen in public office in a long time. He just has no self-awareness, except for the fact that he knows exactly who he's talking to. He's talking to the Fox News viewer. He's talking to the Donald Trump supporter. He's talking to those people who look at the black community and think that the only thing that's wrong with the black community is the fact that they ain't married and they need to get married and they need to get Jesus. These types of things. That's exactly who this clown was talking to. You said you heard his speech in particular last night.
Yeah, I came in like right on that part of talking about the single mothers. I missed that part last night about there's no racism in America.
Yeah.
What America are you living in? What the hell? Because after you just turn on the news, you can see everything that you need to see and have your answer right there. I'm just like, what? What are you talking about? Uncle Tim.
Uncle Tim, hashtag Uncle Tim is trending. And actually, that would be much more accurate because anyone who knows the story of Uncle Tom's cabin, Uncle Tom wasn't the one who betrayed. It was the other name escapes me. But Uncle Tim is far more accurate than Uncle Tom. And I think, and then I was watching the recap on Fox News because I don't know, I like, I'm a sadist, I guess. But this dude, they were pumping him up as the greatest thing that ever happened to the Republican Party. They're pushing the idea that Tim Scott will run for president and that he could possibly be, replace Donald Trump as the leader of the Republican Party. But I think they're missing something fundamental. One, he has no political prowess whatsoever. He has absolutely no charisma. I mean, he's got as much charisma as a cyborg, man. This guy is not. I mean, and it's not just the fact that he's a cornball. It's the fact that they're putting him up thinking that he's going to be the solution to their race problems. The fact that they are racist in the Republican Party, the fact that they are doing everything they possibly can to ensure that not only do we not get justice in this country, but that we believe that there's nothing wrong in this country, right? It's not good enough for us to stand down and no longer march and fight on behalf of black people. What conservatives like Tim Scott actually want, they want black people in this country to think that there's nothing wrong with this country. And they feel like he is their conduit to get that accomplished. Like he's their gateway. Yes. Here's our guy. We could put this black dude up here and he's going to tell you that America's not a racist country. So black folks, America can't possibly be a racist country. And this is
and it's funny, man, because that's what I was just about to say. They have him up here to make him the blackface of America. When is America going to realize, and the people in office going to realize, that you putting a random black person on the screen and having them talk to us about single motherhood and racism in America, it's not going to work anymore, y'all. It may have worked when Obama was in office. Hey, we got a black president in office. But now these days, no, it's not going to work. And no, absolutely not.
And the reason it's not going to work, I mean, that's a great observation. It's not going to work because, we've peeped game a long time ago, right? it took a little while for us to unravel all of the BS narratives that have been pushed on this country, on black people in this country specifically, in order to protect this country from ever having to change, right? The entire welfare queen trope that Ronald Reagan forwarded back in the 80s, that stuck. Like that got entrenched into the national conversation, so much so that it became a part of a certain segment of the black community. It became a part of their language, not directly calling it welfare queen, but respectability politics, right? The idea, like, and this is what he was saying in the first clip that we played of Uncle Tim. It was the idea that you know, black folks needed to sit up straight and wear the right clothes and do this. And if you do all these things, you wouldn't face racism in this country, or you wouldn't have any problems in this country, because they would never admit that racism actually ever existed. It took a while for us to unravel that narrative out of the national discourse. But you're absolutely right, James. That ain't working today. Nobody's going to sit around and say, oh, the problem in this country is that single mothers aren't doing enough work and they're lazy. But this is still the same exact narrative that these clowns on the Republican side of the aisle and the conservative movement and people like Tim Scott and Candace Owens, who have no problems being the black face of white supremacy, they have to understand that the jig is up. Like, nobody is falling for that anymore, because we understand that there are structural problems in this country that has this country specifically designed to exploit as many people as they possibly can, not only black people, right? The exploitation goes across the board, and we understand that now, and that conversation is in the national discourse. And clowns like Tim Scott, he can get up there with this language that's stolen directly from the 80s, taken directly from Ronald Reagan, and think that that's going to help elevate him to the nation, to the top of the ticket. But he's got to understand something. There's going to be plenty of conservatives who would never vote for him simply because he is black. And he thinks he's going to be able to be this grand champion of the grand old party. But at the end of the day, he's just a useful token, and they're putting him up there to be the black face of white supremacy. And I'm sorry to give him such a hard time, but this brother actually had the nerve to say, in the backdrop of George Floyd, in the backdrop of Ahmaud Arbery, in the backdrop of Breonna Taylor, Dante Wright, Walter Scott, all the names that we begin to list, and we can't even list them all. In the backdrop of all that, he's got the nerve to say that America is not a racist country. Well, I don't know what country he's living in, but he's clearly not living in the real world.